Happy Friday Eve. I am so excited for this week's video. I am finally going to be answering the age-old question that only I receive, I think, so it's not really age-old. Can you make a starter from other things? And if so, what? So you saw on my first video that I started my sourdough journey where I was using King Arthur's bread flour to create that, and it's perfect. I love it. I still stand by it. But I've always gotten questions about other flours I could use and or discard that I could use to make some starters, and I never knew the answer. So today we are going to be going through the process of figuring out, can you make starter from different flours? So I have wheat flour, almond flour, discard that's been sitting in my fridge for about a month because I forgot about it, and just the regular King Arthur's tried and true starters, so we can kind of get a comparison across the board. So this will be about a week-long process. So we're starting today, and then from there, hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get some good bakes from it. I'm so excited, and I don't want to waste any more time, so let's get right into the video.
I just want to say, first and foremost, that this is the most exciting video that I feel like I've ever personally put out, and I know that seems kind of confusing, but this is something that I have always been asked about for the past, 3-4 months now. The answer to these questions that I had no answer to. There would be so many times where people would ask me, can you make this kind of starter? Have you tried this? Does this work? And I unfortunately had to say, I have no idea. And that is not a bad place to be because it gives me the opportunity to do fun experiments like this, but it was kind of nagging at me that I just simply didn't know the answer. So this video to me is the most exciting thing because I can finally say yes or no when people ask me these questions. And I know that seems trivial, but I always want to be helpful in anything that I am talking about, and I want to be knowledgeable about it. And the best way to know is to try. So today we are, like I said in the intro, doing all the things. We're trying 4 different flours to see what can we create as a starter. As you saw, I did 2 different starters before this almond flour one. The first one I brought out is old discard that has been sitting in my fridge for probably over a month now, and that was one of the questions I got. Could you reignite a starter that was in the fridge as discard, or any form of discard wherever you store it? Can you kickstart it and make it back into a starter? And that was one of the questions I didn't know the answer to. The next question was, can you make it completely gluten-free by using almond flour? And again, had no idea. I didn't feel like that was an easy enough answer to definitively say yes or no, so I definitely wanted to try this out. And then the next one that you saw was a whole wheat flour. I had people ask me, have you ever tried a whole wheat starter? Have you made whole wheat sourdough bread? And I said, no, that sounds delicious. No, I've never tried it, but I'm willing to try. And so day 1 was literally just me doing what I did normally, where I would put 1/3 of a cup of whatever flour I was using and then 1/4 of a cup of water to start it off. I let it sit overnight, came back the next morning, and then did the usual feeding time. Tried to stay as consistent as possible with this. I will say I was a little more inconsistent as we had friends and family coming over for the past week, so it's been a little bit of a hectic ride. You can see different times of the day that I'm filming, but I promise you I did try to stay consistent so this experiment would be as consistent as possible. So you saw me filling it up, setting it up. In the first video I ever filmed, I show you exactly how to start starter, and I will link that in case you have not seen that. But I'm doing the basics of that, so I didn't want to re-explain and waste your time. So let's just say we have officially started a starter, and now we are moving into trying different flours. We want different kinds of bread in our household, and kudos to you, because this was a laborious process, I'll tell you that. You saw on day 2 kind of what it was looking like. Nothing really changed. Obviously, you can't expect something to grow overnight and ignite overnight. That's just not going to happen. So day 3, you might have noticed we had some bubbles, and if you can't see it because I've already moved so quickly, just head back and then you'll see what I'm saying. Day 3, we had bubbles on our normal starter as well as a little bit in our whole wheat flour, which I thought was surprising. I did think whole wheat might have been a dud. I don't know why. Maybe the type that I had didn't seem like flour that could turn into a starter, and that is exactly why I did this to begin with. So day 4, there wasn't much of a change, so I didn't really film that part. I filmed what it looked like before I fed it, and then didn't do anything with it. Day 5, we were looking really, 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 really good. I tried the float test and we weren't quite there yet. So I filmed it and I thought it looked silly. So I actually deleted that part. But I assure you, I did try the float test on day 5 because it was looking like a normal starter. It's what my starter has been looking like for the past 3 or 4 months. I did mention that I unfortunately let my starter die before I went on vacation a couple weeks ago. So this is the perfect time for me to do this video because I actually needed a starter. But it's what I was looking at normally on day 5, so I was super excited to see if we could bake that day. And unfortunately we couldn't, but that's okay because day 6 rolled around and day 6 almost looked like we were going backwards. I thought maybe I had done something wrong or maybe I didn't add enough flour. I was hungry. I don't know, but I just kept pushing. And then day 7 was the magical day. Day 7 is what led us to this exact moment right here. I did not do a float test, unfortunately. I just saw it and I said, that looks amazing. I'm going to do that. And typically this is around the day that I can bake when starting a starter. Now, if you recall, the original reason I recorded my first video was because my husband set my starter aflame in the oven, and he's done that several times. So I am quite familiar with what it's supposed to look like on what particular day, and I just knew going forward that this was the perfect day to start on that. So day 7 is when I started my bake. Now, this was actually perfect timing because I had 2 orders come through for sourdough bread, and I was like, wow, perfect. It's day 7 and I can make some bread. So I am not making this bread for me. You'll see I made 2 different kinds. So I'm using the discard starter and then the original starter. And I can say that both baked perfectly. There was no issues with baking. There was no additional bake time based on which one I was using. I used the same amount of bake time, same temperature, 425 for 35 minutes covered and then 20 minutes uncovered. I've noticed that in the summer, I can shave off 5 minutes of my bake time on the uncovered portion. So typically in the winter, I would do 35 and 25. So I'd get a full, 60 minutes of baking. And now I can shave off another 5 minutes. So it gives me some time back. But as you can see, it's that nice golden brown color. It rose perfectly. It was a little bit sticky, and that is no fault of its own. I just literally ran out of bread flour. So that's actually on me. But it didn't affect the bake overall, so I just kind of ran with it and let it do its thing. As you saw, I did one original, and then I had a request for cinnamon raisin. Cinnamon raisin is something I'm loving making currently. I just think it's so fun to sprinkle, and you know how long I've been waiting for a brush like that. So to finally have it, it feels like I just need to use it all the time. So I'm trying to find any excuse I possibly can to use that little brush that you see me using there. I just get so excited when I have it. I don't know what it is, but as you saw, original sourdough. I can't definitively tell you sourdough, the original flavor, was the new starter, or if it was the discard and the cinnamon raisin is discard, vice versa. I couldn't tell you, to be honest, but I do know that they both baked well. You can notice that there's the elasticity that you want when you're doing the pullbacks. Again, I still don't know the technical term for it. I just call it a pullback. And you can also see that my scoring skills have not improved as of quite yet. I come in with these fun ideas in my head, and then they just never bake to that. So I will continue saying this until I receive some feedback. If you have any good scoring videos, options, things you swear by, please leave them in the comments. I need to know at this point because it's getting a bit embarrassing. People ask me, oh, what's on top? And I go, I don't know, swirly. But again, I told you this was for an order, so I'm just packaging them up. And I know I don't typically show this, but I thought it was kind of cute. I don't know what your circumstance is when you're baking. If you are baking at all, or if you're just watching, hi, my name's Gabby. If I hadn't mentioned that already, it's so nice to have you here. I post baking content, mainly discard recipes, but I'm trying to branch out on all things baking. But again, I don't know what your circumstance is when you are baking, but I just wanted to show you kind of the overall end product. I don't know. That's pretty much it. Now, this is actually the same day. I just filmed it. I don't feel like I typically show that when I'm doing this, but I just think it's so fun to make pretty things and give them to friends and let them enjoy it. And I love receiving really fun things to open, and I try to keep that in mind when I'm thinking about my customers and what they would want when they're opening something. So I just wanted to show that little tidbit. I got those bags off of Amazon. I can link those down below. And then I got the twine also off of Amazon. Wow, we are an Amazon family over here in a confusing way. So this is day 7, just like the previous day was day 7, but we're rolling with it. I tried again to do, and yeah, I thought it was cute. But like I said, I couldn't definitively tell you which one was which, but know that they both rose perfectly and that they baked the way that they should. So now I am moving into this whole wheat, and I can tell you from the get-go, it just wasn't looking right, wasn't feeling right. At this point, when I'm adding my salt, this isn't the typical texture that I would, normally have. I think there might be too much flour in the original mixing of it before I add the salt, and that's what's leading to this stiffness. There's no elasticity, and typically it's the opposite direction. So when I'm doing my normal sourdough, this beginning stage is almost like too malleable. And then over time, during my stretch and folds, it gets a little bit thicker. The elasticity is a little stronger. But in this way, it was almost the opposite. So the whole wheat had the elasticity from the get-go, and you could see it just literally felt like a rock. And it wasn't stretching, it wasn't folding, it wasn't doing all the things that it should be doing. And it took me twice as long to just get it to this point right here. And even then, you could see it's kind of big in the middle. Like, there was no way for me to physically stretch it any more than it was without breaking it. So I just rolled with it and I said, okay, here we go. And I think I might have added too much flour again, like I said in the beginning. And then as I was rolling this, I put more flour because it wasn't doing what it should be when it's pulling back. So maybe there's too much flour here. And then whenever I'm baking it, obviously I'm going to put flour on top before I do the scoring. And this is something I don't see anyone else really do. And I'm not saying that I am doing anything profound or better than anyone else. That is not what I'm saying here. But I have personally found that if I do my stretch and folds for the day, let it sit for another like 10, 15 minutes, depending on what's going on in my life, come back and then do, the typical roll out, pull back, put in the Banneton basket, sit overnight. I found that if I don't do that again, my bread doesn't come out normally. I don't really know the best way to explain it, but I'll put it in the Banneton basket. I'll let it sit overnight, and then I'll literally pretend like I just finished my stretch and folds and do that again, where I'll make it out to the rectangle, and then I'll fold it on itself and then roll it and then do the pullbacks, and then I'll put it in the oven like you just saw me doing there. I don't know if that is something technical or scientific that I'm doing. I couldn't tell you. I just know it works for me personally, especially doing inclusions. There were times where overnight the bread would sink or it would get flat, and I just didn't like the look of that. So I was like, how do I ensure that it always looks the same every single time? Well, I just do it again. So that is what the whole wheat has baked to. That's what it looks like. It's a little bit firm. Again, like I said, it didn't really rise properly like I thought it would. It felt stiff. I couldn't roll out the middle section. So that's what you're seeing in this bake here. I think moving forward, I'm going to try, hopefully, to do another little experiment here and get those air holes that you expect in sourdough. And hopefully I can get that. But this bread was a little bit too dense for me. I didn't end up eating it further than taking a bite, and it just didn't taste good. But the answer is yes, you can make a starter. Now, day 5, I believe, is when almond flour, I've decided, was at its peak, and that is best as it was going to get. It had an awful smell. It never bubbled. It never rose. It never had the yeast smell whatsoever. It never did anything. It just smelled awful. But just know that it did not make it further than day 4, day 5, because I just couldn't handle the smell anymore. It was making me gag. But the answer is yes, you can restart a discard and make it into a starter, depending on how long you've had it in there. Obviously, you can start a starter the same way that you would normally start a starter. We've been over that in the first video. And yes, you can start a whole wheat flour starter. Maybe just use a different type of flour that I used. You might get a better result than I did. But that is all that I have for you this week, and I hope to see you all in the next one.